Adrian Blackwood stood in the marble-floored study of his grandfather's estate, reading the will that would change his life forever. At 32, he had built his own tech empire worth billions, but the document in his hands threatened to strip away the foundation of everything he had worked for. His grandfather, Theodore Blackwood, had been the patriarch of one of America's oldest and most powerful families. The Blackwood fortune, built over generations through steel, oil, and strategic investments, dwarfed even Adrian's considerable wealth. But Theodore had always been disappointed by Adrian's modern approach to business and his rejection of traditional family values. The will's conditions were clear and devastating. Adrian would inherit the family fortune and control of Blackwood Industries only if he married within 6 months and remained married for at least 1 year. Theodore believed that marriage would teach his grandson the responsibility and commitment necessary to preserve the family legacy. Adrian's legal team had searched for loopholes, but the will was ironclad. His grandfather had anticipated every possible challenge, ensuring that the marriage requirement couldn't be circumvented through legal maneuvering or technicalities. The stakes were enormous. Without the inheritance, Adrian would lose not only billions of dollars, but also the family properties, art collections, and business connections that had been part of the Blackwood legacy for over a century. Competitors were already circling, knowing that a weakened Blackwood empire would create opportunities for hostile takeovers. Adrian had considered various options, including attempting to find a suitable wife among the socialites and businesswomen in his circle. However, every potential candidate either wanted a real marriage or demanded compensation that would create legal complications. Walking through the city that evening, frustrated and running out of time, Adrian found himself in a small diner, far from his usual haunts. It was there that he first noticed Emma, a young waitress who moved with quiet efficiency despite the obvious exhaustion in her eyes. Chapter 2. The Proposal. Emma Rodriguez worked 3 jobs to support herself and send money to her sick mother in a small town upstate. At 26, she had dreams of finishing college and becoming a teacher, but financial reality kept those aspirations just out of reach. The diner where she worked the night shift was her most reliable source of income, though the tips were modest and the hours exhausting. She had learned to be invisible to most customers, efficiently serving food while avoiding unwanted attention from men who saw her as an easy target. When Adrian first approached her after her shift, Emma's instinct was to politely decline whatever proposition he might have. She had dealt with enough wealthy men who thought money could buy anything they wanted, including her dignity. But Adrian's proposal was unlike anything she had ever heard. He explained his situation honestly, offering her a substantial sum to enter into a marriage of convenience that would last exactly 1 year. The arrangement would be purely business, with separate living quarters and no personal obligations beyond public appearances. The amount Adrian offered was life-changing. It would pay for her mother's medical treatments, allow Emma to finish her education, and provide financial security she had never imagined possible. But it also meant entering a world she didn't understand and taking risks she couldn't fully calculate. Emma asked for time to consider the proposal, and Adrian gave her his contact information along with references that would allow her to verify his identity and financial status. He understood that she needed to protect herself and respected her caution. After 3 sleepless nights of weighing the risks and benefits, Emma called Adrian and agreed to his proposal. They met with lawyers to draft a comprehensive prenuptial agreement that protected both parties and clearly defined the terms of their arrangement. The contract specified that their marriage would be dissolved after exactly 1 year, with Emma receiving her agreed-upon compensation regardless of the circumstances. Both parties agreed to maintain the fiction of a loving marriage in public while leading separate private lives. Chapter 3. The Wedding. The wedding was a small, private ceremony that satisfied the legal requirements of Adrian's grandfather's will while avoiding the media attention that a larger event would have attracted. Only a few witnesses were present, including Adrian's lawyer and Emma's best friend from the diner. Emma wore a simple white dress that Adrian had purchased for the occasion, though she insisted on something modest rather than the elaborate gown he had initially suggested. The ceremony took place in a judge's chambers, with vows that were legally binding but emotionally hollow. After the ceremony, Adrian and Emma returned to his penthouse apartment, where she would have her own wing to ensure privacy and independence. The living arrangement had been carefully planned to give them both space while maintaining the appearance of a married couple when necessary. Emma was overwhelmed by the luxury of her new surroundings, but she was determined not to let the wealth change her fundamental values or goals. She continued working at the diner, despite Adrian's suggestion that it was no longer necessary, because she valued the independence and normalcy it provided. The first few weeks of their arrangement were awkward, as both Adrian and Emma learned to navigate their unusual situation. They had to coordinate schedules for public appearances while maintaining their separate private lives and personal boundaries. Adrian was surprised by Emma's insistence on contributing to household expenses and her refusal to take advantage of his wealth beyond their agreed-upon arrangement. Her integrity and independence challenged his assumptions about people's motivations when dealing with the wealthy. Emma, meanwhile, observed Adrian's world with curiosity and growing understanding. She saw the pressures he faced, the isolation that came with his position, and the way his wealth both protected and imprisoned him within a narrow social circle. Chapter 4. Public Appearances. As Adrian's wife, Emma was required to attend various social and business functions where their marriage needed to appear genuine and loving. These events were a crash course in high society etiquette and the complex dynamics of wealth and power. Emma's natural intelligence and empathy served her well in these situations. She listened carefully to conversations, asked thoughtful questions, and displayed a genuine interest in people that many found refreshing in a social circle often characterized by superficiality and calculation. Adrian was impressed by Emma's ability to adapt to unfamiliar social situations while maintaining her authenticity. She never tried to pretend to be someone she wasn't, but she learned quickly and handled herself with a grace that earned respect from even the most judgmental observers. The business community was intrigued by Adrian's unexpected choice of wife. Emma's background was so different from the typical socialite or business heiress that people assumed there must be a compelling love story behind their union. During these public appearances, Adrian and Emma developed a comfortable rapport that made their fake marriage appear convincingly real. They learned each other's mannerisms, preferences, and ways of thinking, creating an intimacy that was professional but surprisingly natural. Emma's presence began to change how people perceived Adrian. She brought out a warmer, more approachable side of his personality that had been hidden beneath years of business-focused interactions. Colleagues noted that he seemed more relaxed and personable when she was with him. The success of their public performances created an unexpected problem. Both Adrian and Emma began to enjoy each other's company more than they had anticipated. The line between their professional arrangement and genuine friendship started to blur in ways that neither had expected. Chapter 5. Growing Closer. As months passed, Adrian and Emma found themselves spending more time together beyond their required public appearances. They discovered shared interests in books, movies, and long conversations about life, dreams, and the complexities of human nature. Emma's perspective on wealth and privilege challenged Adrian's assumptions about his own life and responsibilities. She helped him see how his position could be used for positive impact beyond just accumulating more money or power. Adrian, in turn, encouraged Emma's educational goals and provided resources that allowed her to pursue her dream of becoming a teacher. He respected her desire to earn her achievements rather than simply being given them, but he found ways to support her efforts without undermining her independence. Their conversations revealed the loneliness that both had experienced in their different circumstances. Adrian's wealth had isolated him from genuine relationships, while Emma's financial struggles had left little time for personal connections or romance. Emma began to see beyond Adrian's billionaire facade to the man underneath who had sacrificed personal happiness for business success. She recognized his intelligence, his capacity for kindness, and his genuine desire to honor his family's legacy while building something meaningful of his own. Adrian was drawn to Emma's strength, resilience, and the way she found joy in simple pleasures that he had forgotten how to appreciate. Her presence in his life brought a warmth and authenticity that he hadn't realized he was missing. The physical attraction between them was undeniable, but both were careful to maintain the boundaries of their agreement. They had developed genuine affection and respect for each other, but they were also aware that their arrangement had a predetermined end date. Chapter 6. The Investigation. As their marriage approached the 6-month mark, Adrian's business rivals began investigating Emma's background, looking for scandals or information that could be used to challenge the validity of their marriage or damage Adrian's reputation. The investigation was thorough and invasive, examining Emma's family history, employment records, and personal relationships. Private investigators followed her daily routines and interviewed people from her past, creating a comprehensive profile of her life. Emma was unaware of the investigation initially, but she began to notice strange occurrences, people asking unusual questions about her family, unfamiliar faces in places she frequented, and a general sense that she was being watched. When Adrian learned about the investigation, he was furious that his competitors would target Emma, who was innocent of any wrongdoing and had simply agreed to help him solve a legal problem. He hired his own security team to protect her and began his own counter-investigation. The investigation revealed that Emma had been remarkably honest about her background and circumstances. There were no hidden scandals, criminal activities, or deceptions in her past. She was exactly who she claimed to be, a hard-working young woman trying to build a better life for herself and her family. However, the investigators did uncover some interesting details about Emma's family history that even she was unaware of. Her mother had been adopted as a child, and the records of her biological family had been sealed for decades. Adrian's security team, working with professional genealogists, began tracing Emma's maternal lineage back through generations. What they discovered would change everything they thought they knew about Emma's identity and her connection to Adrian's world. Chapter 7. The Discovery. The genealogical research revealed that Emma's biological grandmother had been born into one of America's most prominent families before being given up for adoption during a scandal in the 1940s. The family name that emerged from the investigation was one that Adrian recognized immediately. Emma's true maternal lineage traced back to the Ashford family, whose wealth and influence rivaled that of the Blackwoods. The Ashfords had been business partners, competitors, and occasionally enemies of the Blackwood family for over a century. The revelation meant that Emma was not the poor waitress she appeared to be, but rather the unknowing heir to a fortune that had been held in trust for decades, waiting for the rightful heir to be identified and claim their inheritance. Adrian struggled with this information, unsure whether to tell Emma immediately or investigate further to confirm the findings. He was also grappling with the implications for their relationship and his own motivations for marrying her. The Ashford family trust had been established by Emma's great-grandfather, who had specified that the inheritance would go to his direct descendants, regardless of their knowledge of their heritage or their current circumstances. The trust had grown substantially over the decades and was now worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Emma's adoption and her mother's subsequent poverty had hidden her true identity for generations. She had grown up believing she was from a working-class family with no connections to wealth or privilege, never knowing that she was actually from one of the most powerful families in the country. Adrian realized that Emma's secret last name would not only shock his world, but completely transform hers. She would go from being a struggling waitress to being one of the wealthiest women in America, with a family legacy that matched his own. Chapter 8. The Revelation. Adrian decided that Emma deserved to know the truth about her heritage, regardless of how it might complicate their relationship or his own situation. He arranged for the genealogists and lawyers to present their findings to Emma in a formal meeting. Emma's initial reaction was disbelief. The idea that she was connected to a wealthy family seemed impossible given her lived experience of financial struggle and her mother's modest circumstances. She questioned the accuracy of the research and demanded additional verification. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. DNA tests, historical records, and legal documents all confirmed that Emma was the direct descendant and rightful heir of the Ashford family fortune. Her mother had been adopted as an infant, severing the connection to their biological family's wealth. As the reality of her situation sank in, Emma experienced a complex mix of emotions. She was excited about the financial security this would provide for her and her mother, but she was also overwhelmed by the sudden change in her identity and circumstances. Emma's first concern was for her adoptive mother, who had raised her with love and sacrifice despite their financial struggles. She wanted to ensure that this revelation wouldn't diminish the importance of the woman who had been her real mother in every way that mattered. The legal process of claiming her inheritance would be complex, requiring extensive documentation and court proceedings to establish her identity and rights. However, the lawyers were confident that her claim was legitimate and would ultimately be successful. Adrian watched Emma process this life-changing information with a mixture of admiration and uncertainty. He was happy for her good fortune, but he also wondered how this revelation would affect their relationship and their marriage arrangement. Chapter 9. Changing Dynamics. Emma's newfound wealth and status created a fundamental shift in the dynamics of her relationship with Adrian. She was no longer the poor waitress who had married him for financial security, but rather an heiress whose family fortune rivaled his own. The revelation forced both Adrian and Emma to examine their feelings and motivations more honestly. Adrian had to confront the possibility that his growing affection for Emma might be influenced by her new status, while Emma wondered whether Adrian's interest in her would change now that she was his social equal. Emma's approach to her inheritance was characteristically thoughtful and principled. She established charitable foundations, paid for her mother's medical care, and used her new resources to help other struggling families. Her values remained unchanged despite her dramatically altered circumstances. The business and social communities were fascinated by the revelation of Emma's true identity. The story of the lost Ashford heiress who had been discovered through marriage to a Blackwood created a media sensation that both Adrian and Emma found overwhelming. Emma's new status also meant that she had to learn about her biological family's history and legacy. The Ashfords had been involved in various business ventures, philanthropic efforts, and social causes over the generations, creating a complex heritage for Emma to understand and potentially continue. Adrian found himself in the unusual position of being married to someone whose family background was as prestigious as his own. This equality changed the nature of their relationship, removing the power imbalance that had existed when Emma was financially dependent on their arrangement. The approaching end of their one-year marriage agreement took on new significance, given Emma's changed circumstances. Both had to decide whether their relationship had evolved beyond their original business arrangement into something worth preserving for its own sake. Chapter 10. Family Histories Intertwined. As Emma learned more about her family's history, she discovered that the Ashford and Blackwood families had been connected for generations through business partnerships, social relationships, and occasional conflicts. Their marriage was not just a coincidence, but part of a larger historical pattern. The research revealed that Emma's great-great-grandfather and Adrian's great-great-grandfather had been business partners in the late 1800s, building their fortunes together before a disagreement led to a decades-long rivalry between their families. Emma and Adrian found themselves in the unique position of potentially healing a generational rift through their relationship. Their marriage, which had begun as a business arrangement, could become a symbol of reconciliation between two powerful families. The historical connection added depth and meaning to their relationship that neither had anticipated. They were not just two individuals who had found each other by chance, but representatives of families whose destinies had been intertwined for over a century. Emma's study of her family history revealed strong women who had used their wealth and influence to create positive change in their communities. She found inspiration in their examples and began to envision how she might continue their legacy of social responsibility. Adrian's understanding of his own family history deepened as he learned more about the Ashford connection. He began to see his grandfather's will not just as a test of his commitment to marriage, but as an opportunity to restore relationships that had been damaged by previous generations. The revelation that Emma was an Ashford heir also explained some of the qualities that had attracted Adrian to her in the first place. Her natural grace, intelligence, and strength were not just personal characteristics, but part of a family heritage of leadership and social responsibility. Chapter 11. Love Realized. As their one-year anniversary approached, both Adrian and Emma had to confront the reality that their feelings for each other had evolved far beyond their original business arrangement. What had begun as mutual convenience had become genuine love and partnership. Adrian realized that he had fallen in love with Emma before learning about her true identity, which proved to him that his feelings were based on who she was as a person rather than her wealth or status. This understanding gave him confidence in the authenticity of his emotions. Emma faced the challenge of determining whether Adrian's love for her was genuine or influenced by her newfound status as an heiress. However, his consistent behavior and the way he had supported her goals, even when she was struggling financially, convinced her of his sincerity. Their conversations about the future became more serious and personal as they considered whether to continue their marriage beyond the required year. Both had grown and changed during their time together, becoming better versions of themselves through their partnership. The decision to stay married was not just about their personal feelings, but also about their shared vision for using their combined resources and influence to create positive change. Together, they could accomplish more than either could achieve alone. Emma's transformation from struggling waitress to confident heiress had been supported and encouraged by Adrian, who had seen her potential from the beginning. His belief in her abilities had helped her develop the confidence to embrace her new role and responsibilities. Adrian's evolution from isolated billionaire to caring partner had been guided by Emma's example of empathy, integrity, and social consciousness. She had taught him that true wealth came from relationships and meaningful contributions to society. Chapter 12. The New Partnership. Adrian and Emma's decision to remain married and build a real life together was celebrated by both families and the broader community. Their union represented not just personal happiness, but also the healing of historical divisions and the creation of new possibilities for social impact. They established joint foundations that combined the Blackwood and Ashford family resources to address education, healthcare, and economic opportunity for underserved communities. Emma's background gave her unique insights into the challenges faced by working families. Their marriage became a model for how wealth and privilege could be used responsibly and ethically. They demonstrated that success was not just about accumulating resources, but about using those resources to create opportunities for others. Emma completed her education and became involved in educational reform initiatives, using her platform and resources to advocate for better opportunities for children from low-income families. Her personal experience of struggle gave authenticity to her advocacy. Adrian's business practices evolved to reflect the values that Emma had helped him develop. He implemented more ethical policies, improved working conditions for employees, and focused on sustainable business practices that considered long-term social impact. Their relationship continued to deepen as they worked together on shared goals and supported each other's individual aspirations. They had created a partnership that was both personally fulfilling and socially meaningful. The revelation of Emma's true identity had initially shocked Adrian's world, but ultimately it had created opportunities for both of them to become better people and make a greater impact than either could have achieved alone. Chapter 13. Legacy and Love. 5 years after their wedding, Adrian and Emma had built a life that honored both their family legacies while creating something uniquely their own. Their marriage had evolved from a business arrangement into a love story that inspired others and demonstrated the power of authentic partnership. Emma had become a respected leader in education and social justice, using her resources and platform to advocate for systemic changes that would benefit future generations. Her journey from waitress to philanthropist had given her a unique perspective on both struggle and privilege. Adrian had transformed his business empire to reflect values of social responsibility and ethical leadership. Under Emma's influence, he had learned to measure success not just in financial terms, but in terms of positive impact on communities and individuals. Their combined wealth and influence had been used to create lasting change in areas such as education, healthcare, and economic development. They had proven that inherited privilege could be a force for good when guided by compassion and social consciousness. The couple had welcomed 2 children who were being raised with an understanding of both their privileged position and their responsibility to use that privilege to help others. Emma and Adrian were determined to break cycles of entitlement and disconnection that often affected wealthy families. Their love story had become legendary in business and social circles, not just because of the dramatic revelation of Emma's identity, but because of how they had used their relationship to create positive change in the world. The marriage that had begun as a solution to Adrian's inheritance problem had become the foundation for a life of purpose, love, and meaningful contribution to society. Emma's secret last name had indeed shocked Adrian's world, but it had also transformed it in ways that neither had imagined possible. Their story continued to inspire others to look beyond surface appearances and social barriers to find authentic connection and shared purpose. They had proven that love could transcend circumstances and that the most unexpected partnerships could create the most extraordinary outcomes. We want to thank all of you who have listened to this incredible story of hidden identities, unexpected love, and the power of family legacy. We'd love to know where in the world you're listening from and how this story resonates with your own experiences of discovering surprising truths about yourself or your family. Please share in the comments what country or city you're from and tell us if you've ever had moments where learning something new about your background changed your perspective on life. Your stories inspire us to continue sharing tales that celebrate the mysteries of family history and the beautiful ways that love can transform our understanding of who we are and what we're capable of becoming.